The ripples of the outdoor pool were stirred into tiny waves by the noonday hot breeze. The villa's courtyard was crowded with familiar parents and children, with laughter, noises, and the crackling sounds of clinking glasses intertwining and filling the whole venue. Today is the fixed parent-child weekend gathering in this circle. Almost every familiar family was present. I arrived on time with my 10-year-old son Ethan, and my best friend Luna also showed up early with her 80-year-old son Leo, waiting by the poolside. Everyone was immersed in a relaxed, pleasant party atmosphere. No one knew that 10 minutes later this calm poolside would be stirred by a storm that would overturn everyone's beliefs and would completely sever the decade-long false friendship between Luna and me. No one would have guessed that right now, standing here. I have been reborn with all the memories of my previous life. In my previous life, today was the day Leo slipped and fell into the deep water at this pool party. He couldn't swim and splashed frantically, crying for help. At that moment, my son Ethan, who had excellent swimming ability, saw someone drowning and jumped into the pool without hesitation. The water that day was relatively cold. The undercurrent was chaotic, and Ethan exhausted all his strength to save Leo. He managed to drag him ashore, but he collapsed from fatigue and inhaled too much water, causing severe pulmonary edema, and was rushed to the ICU that night. The rescued Leo only had mild drowning and recovered normally after a short rest, jumping and playing again. What chilled me to the bone was that Luna's family, all along, gave no sincere thanks. They took it for granted that friends should help each other, that saving a child was only natural. Even when Ethan was hospitalized and facing high medical bills and pain, Luna privately spread rumors that Ethan's swimming ability wasn't good enough, that he dragged his feet in saving Leo, that he was simply incapable and not worthy of praise. Not only that, in the following years, Luna's family used this incident to repeatedly moralize me. If I did something that displeased her, if I didn't unreservedly help her family, she would bring up Ethan saving Leo, accuse me of ingratitude and cold-bloodedness, and, relying on so-called life-saving gratitude, continually seek favors from me, free luxuries, free networking resources, borrowed idle properties under my name. These various profits and schemes never stopped. My son Ethan and I were bound and exploited by this family for more than 10 years. Until my previous life, I fell gravely ill and died. Lying on my deathbed, I could still hear Luna and her husband Jake talking outside the door. They openly confessed their relief that Leo had been saved, and mocked me and Ethan for being stupid, willingly letting themselves be manipulated by them. It was at that moment that I finally saw the true face of this greedy, selfish, and unscrupulous family. So in this life, I have been reborn to this pool party, returning to 10 minutes before Leo falls into the water with only one thought: I must not let my son follow the same path. I must not soften my heart to fulfill this family's luck and calculations. The calamities they deserve cannot be withheld. Not one bit. I stand by the railing in the shallow end of the pool, watching Leo not far away stepping on a float and playing at the edge of the deep end. All the parents in the venue are chatting and relaxing. Nobody watches this unruly child. Luna is gathered with the social set, holding a glass of champagne, chatting and laughing, busy comparing outfits and luxury goods, turning a blind eye to her son's dangerous behavior. Jake sits under the parasol, playing on his phone and sipping a cold drink, completely lax, not fulfilling a single bit of paternal supervision. Ethan has just taken off his slippers and is about to jump into the pool to play with the other kids when, with a sideways glance, I notice Leo wobbling at the deep end, and my steps freeze in an instant. He was still young, kind-hearted, and always eager to help. When he saw someone his own age on the edge of danger, he instinctively stepped forward and ran toward the deep water area, ready to dive in to save him at any moment. I reached out and tightly grabbed Ethan's wrist, my grip steady and firm, and pulled him back with force. Ethan's steps faltered as he turned to look at me, his eyes full of confusion. "Mom, that little brother is in danger. He's about to fall." Ethan's voice was clear and bright, carrying the pure kindness of a child. I did not offer any extra explanations. I simply held his wrist firmly, my tone calm but not up for debate. "Stand here and don't move. Don't go past here, and don't go into the water." Ethan had never seen me so authoritative before, and for a moment he didn't dare move again, obediently standing by my side, though his eyes remained fixed on Leo a short distance away. At that moment, a sudden gust of wind blew across the surface of the pool, stirring the water and splashing onto the floating board. Leo, who had already been unstable, instantly lost his balance and toppled straight into the deep water. A thundering splash filled the air as water splashed everywhere, and Leo completely sank under. He couldn't swim at all. His hands and feet frantically fluttered on the surface, his head sinking and rising, a childlike, panicked call for help echoing through the courtyard in broken sobs. Help! Help! The lively gathering instantly quieted, and all the chatting parents and playing children turned their heads toward the deep end of the pool. After a few seconds of stunned silence, the courtyard burst into alarm again, with one after another cries and screams. The first to react was Luna. She flung the champagne glass from her hand, her high heels not even fully on, and charged toward the pool edge like mad. Seeing her son struggling in the water, she didn't call for help or think to dive in immediately. Instead, she turned and fixed her gaze on me and Ethan. She clearly saw that the Ethan who had almost gone to rescue someone just now was stopped by me in his tracks. Ethan, go and save your brother. Get in the water now. Luna cried out, heart-wrenching and urgent, with a commanding tone that left no room for refusal. Ethan instinctively wanted to rush forward again, but the force in my hand tightened once more, steadying him by my side, not letting him move a step. It was this brief 2 or 3 seconds of delay that allowed Leo in the water to struggle with less strength, his head sinking faster, and his pleading cries growing weaker and weaker, the situation growing more and more desperate. Luna panicked completely, suddenly turning and fixing her gaze on me with a ferocious, furious look. No longer the gentle and kind woman she usually was, she strode up to me and raised her hand to push me aside, trying to push Ethan into the water. What are you doing? Why are you stopping the child? Luna's voice was sharp and piercing, cutting through the noise of the crowd. Let Ethan go in there to save him. That's my son. If something happens, can you bear the responsibility? I stood firmly in place, allowing her to yell and push in a fit of rage, my stance unmoving, still holding Ethan tightly. He is your son, not mine, and not Ethan's responsibility. I spoke calmly, clearly and loudly enough for everyone present to hear distinctly. He fell in because you, the guardians, were negligent in supervision. There was no one watching, and you let the situation run rampant. The consequences are yours to bear, and have nothing to do with my child. The moment those words landed, the room fell into a deathly silence. The dozen or so parents present were all stunned, turning their heads toward us with looks of surprise. In everyone's entrenched perception, Luna and I are best friends for more than a decade. Our family's children grew up together, and in a crisis it's only natural to step in and save. No one expected me to utter such cold words in public. Luna, as if she had heard the biggest joke, her eyes instantly reddened, tears welling up on cue, and she began to cry and wobble in front of the crowd. Everyone listen. This is my best friend for over 10 years. I must have been blind to treat her as a friend. Now that my son's life is in danger, she's actually stopping the child from saving him. How can she be so callous, so heartless? If anything happens to my son, I will not spare you and your family. Luna's face twisted. She ranted hysterically at me, her voice full of malice. Ethan can swim. He could clearly save my son. But your selfish cold-blooded Nessia stood by and did nothing. You are deliberately trying to let my son die. I met her out-of-control look with a calm, unruffled gaze, showing no trace of emotion. I am not obliged to have my child risk drowning, injury, or danger to life in order to cover for the negligence of you two. During the 10-odd seconds we stood off, Leo in the pool had exhausted his last reserves, no longer thrashing, his body gradually sinking. Only a few bubbles intermittently rising to the surface. The situation had become utterly critical. A few men nearby, who had noticed, no longer bothered with our dispute, quickly stepping forward, leaping into the deep water one after another, swimming toward Leo's sinking body to perform a rescue against the clock. Luna watched the rescuers, her emotions still not abating, instead directing all her anger and resentment at me. She fixed her gaze on me, word by word, gritting her teeth as she said, "If anything happens to my son, I will never forgive you in this life. I will make you and Ethan pay for today's cold-bloodedness." I still held Ethan's hand, quietly watching her feral, hysterical tableau, remaining silent throughout, offering no further defense. In the past life, my softness, my kindness, my concern for a friendship of more than 10 years letting my child fight with all his might to save her son was repaid with over a decade of scheming, exploitation, and rightful demands. In this life, I only stand my ground, protect my child, and guard our peaceful life as mother and son. A few male guests quickly swam to the deep area, working together to lift the completely exhausted Leo up to the surface and drag him steadily toward the shore. Amid the splashing water, the onlookers automatically cleared a path, and all eyes were fixed on the rescued child as he was brought to the bank. The noisy courtyard instantly fell silent except for rapid breaths and fragmented chatter. Leo lay flat on the ground beside the pool, eyes closed, lips bluish, chest heaving faintly, his entire face pale. The guests who saved him immediately knelt down and proficiently performed first aid, repeatedly compressing his chest and performing rescue breaths. After several rounds of CPR, Leo had not woken up yet. Only occasional water dripped from his mouth and nose. His condition extremely perilous. Luna collapsed to the ground in an instant, her hands gripping Leo's arms tightly, crying heart-wrenchingly. She felt no guilt or self-blame, did not reflect on her own supervisory negligence, and instead suddenly turned her head, directing all her anger at me, raising her voice to accuse me in front of everyone present. Everyone clearly see, it's her. Ethan was right beside him, an excellent swimmer. As soon as he reached out, he could have saved my child, but she blocked him, Luna wailed, twisting the facts and absolving herself entirely. My son has become like this now, all because of her cold-blooded selfishness. 10+ years of friendship, to her it's worthless. She stood by and watched my child go to his death. She accurately tapped into the crowd's sympathy, magnifying her own pity and downplaying the fact that she herself and her husband had been completely absent in supervising the child as he threatened himself. Many guests who did not know the whole truth were instantly swayed by her emotions, and their eyes toward me grew more questioning and resentful. Someone whispered that even though there was risk involved, it was too cold and inhumane for a familiar child to be blocked from rescue. Others softly advised me to back down for now, even if it's just verbal comfort. There was no need to make a big scene. Jake slowly lowered his phone at this moment, rushing over in a fluster without first checking his son's condition. Instead, he immediately stood by Luna's side and, echoing her, accused me. His face darkened and his tone was full of anger as he deliberately stirred up the crowd. Our two families have been friends for over 10 years. We've never treated you badly. Today's incident, to put it plainly, is because you didn't help when you should have. You're narrow-minded. If our son has any after effects, we will pursue it to the end. The couple's duet created the perfect victim pose. In just a few minutes, they pinned me with the label of cold-blooded and ungrateful. The public opinion around us had already completely shifted in their favor. Ethan stood at my side, somewhat bewildered, instinctively grasping the hem of my shirt. He didn't understand the grudges among adults, only vaguely sensed that everyone was blaming him and his mother. I gently patted his hand to comfort him, then stepped forward to face the gathered crowd, speaking clearly, calmly, and loudly, outshining the surrounding noise. First of all, offering help is a favor, not a duty. I scanned the faces of everyone present, finally fixing on the grimacing Luna couple. The pool has clear zones. The deepwater area is forbidden for children to play unsupervised, and warning signs are visible everywhere on site. Leo is 8 years old and has basic cognitive abilities. Yet you, as his guardians, allowed him to run and play in the deep area without anyone supervising. That is the first dereliction of duty. I raised my hand toward the surveillance cameras at the poolside, continuing to present evidence. The entire scene was recorded by high-definition surveillance. Who failed in their duties? Who stood by and watched? Who first obstructed the rescue? Every frame is clear. I am not obligated to let my child risk exhaustion, drowning, or even life-threatening danger because of your negligence. Not waiting for everyone's reaction, I ripped open Luna's years-long hypocritical mask and exposed her scheming in front of everyone. Let's talk about the relationship. For over a decade, you repeatedly claimed to be my close friend, free borrowing my luxury items and idle properties, asking me to connect you with networks, and countless conveniences never stopped. I did my best every time, never refused. But what did you do? I asked in a calm tone, yet every word struck hard. After each advantage you gained, you turned around to smear me as stingy and difficult to get along with, privately spreading my negative rumors. If there was even one time I failed to meet your unreasonable demands, You would cry victim everywhere, saying I am ungrateful and cold-blooded. The eyes of the onlookers gradually changed from doubt to astonishment. Many parents who knew me and Luna looked at each other subtly, evidently aware of these fragmented rumors. Luna's face went pale in an instant, frantically waving to defend herself. You're lying. I've never done any of these things. You're trying to clear yourself, deliberately slandering me. Slander, I replied coolly, then released the damning proof. Last month you asked me to lend you a limited edition bag. And then in the ladies group you claimed my bag was a counterfeit. Last week you asked me to help connect resources for your husband's cooperation, and after it succeeded you privately said I meddle and boast about my connections. I have all these chat records saved intact. Silence fell, and everyone's eyes focused on the panicked Luna. We all operate in the same circle, fully aware of this kind of superficial civility and backstabbing hypocrisy, and the right from wrong was instantly clear. At this moment, a few violent coughs broke the silence. The rescued Leo finally coughed up the water blocking his airway, slowly opened his eyes, and his cry was faint. After confirming the child was not in serious danger, Luna and Jake not only did not feel relieved, but grew angrier, because they had completely lost the core leverage to cry foul and demand accountability. Jake's face turned ashen, and he tried to push a narrative. Even if we were negligent, you all witnessed that you did not save him. That would harm our reputation if it gets out, I coldly retorted, turning the tide of public opinion. The ugly thing is not that you didn't save a life, it's that the guardian failed and caused trouble, then morally blackmailed others and forced another family's child to risk itself. Today, everyone here can see clearly that it was you two who failed first. And you're the ones distorting the truth. From now on, I and your couple shall have no relationship whatsoever. I pulled Ethan back a half step, resolute in my stance. Your family matters and your child's matters have nothing to do with me or my son. The party fiasco ended abruptly, and after Leo woke up, he still looked weak, coughing constantly and feeling short of breath. Luna, unable to deal with the embarrassment on sight, hugged the child and cried as she rushed to the nearest private hospital, Jake close behind. Before they left, the two glared at me fiercely, threats clear in their eyes. I showed no emotion, packing up with Ethan and driving to follow closely. I knew this family would not let it rest easily. A targeted, fault-finding farce of accountability had only just begun. Rather than wait for them to come knocking later, it was better to follow up on the spot and stomp out the motive for their trouble. After we arrived at the hospital, Leo was immediately taken to the pediatric emergency department for a full examination. After a full set of x-rays, blood tests, and lung screening, the doctor gave a clear diagnosis: inhalation pneumonia caused by drowning and inhalation, with a mild brain oxygen deficiency response, requiring 3 to 5 days of hospitalization for observation and anti-inflammatory treatment, followed by proper rest to recover fully, with no permanent sequelae expected. Even though the results were not serious, Luna refused to back down, deliberately exaggerating the severity of the illness, crying loudly in the emergency hallway to attract the attention of patients and families passing by. Such a good child, being treated like this for no reason. If Ethan had reached out to save him at that moment, my son would not have suffered this. Luna sat on the hallway bench, wiping tears and arousing the sympathy of those around her, every word aimed at shifting all blame onto me. Jake was even more direct. After obtaining the medical report, he stood in front of me, blunt and forceful, demanding compensation. You heard the doctor's diagnosis: pneumonia with brain oxygen deficiency. These are real injuries. You should bear all the costs: hospitalization, tests, future nutritional expenses, and mental distress compensation. Jake spoke firmly, without the slightest guilt, confidently throwing out an inflated demand: 8,000, not a cent less. Must be settled today. In addition, you must apologize to us in front of all your relatives and friends, admitting you are cold-blooded, selfish, and a bystander who did nothing to save them. I stood in the empty corridor, calmly watching the couple's duplicitous extortion act, staying completely composed throughout. Ethan stood quietly by my side, and I raised my hand to protect him from the surrounding quarrels and noise. Firstly, Leo's near-drowning stemmed from you two's failure to supervise. The child wandered into a dangerous deep-water area while you were all on your phones chatting, with no supervisory duty at all. My pace was steady, my logic clear, every sentence hitting the core. Secondly, Several adults on the scene acted to rescue him immediately. Leo woke up smoothly and suffered no permanent damage, so all medical expenses are only for standard treatment. Thirdly, my child and I have no legal obligation to render aid. I pulled out my phone, opened the backup pool surveillance footage, and handed it to them. The footage clearly recorded the entire process. Luna only socializing and enjoying herself. Jake buried in his phone the whole time. No one supervising Leo, while I stopped Ethan in time. Surveillance is proof. All fault lies with you. I will not pursue your failure to supervise any further. It's already more than enough for me. You have no right to demand any compensation from me. I spoke coldly, refusing to back down at all. Seeing this, Luna instantly dropped her act. Throwing a temper tantrum and raising her voice in the hallway, she deliberately slumped into a chair, crying and accusing me of bullying them with money and power, of coldness and ruthlessness, distorting the facts, saying I was rich and powerful, deliberately oppressing an ordinary family, and watching their child face danger without admitting fault or paying compensation. Bystanders and medical staff turned their heads, and many people who didn't know the truth were misled by her cries. Casting questioning looks, I did not let her continue to smear and manipulate the scene. I directly pressed play on my phone and played back a recorded conversation from a previous life that I had accidentally captured. The text clearly records in private how Luna and Jake tease Leo for being naughty and troublesome, complain that the child slows down life, and are often negligent in supervision. Since you care so much about the child, why do you let him roam freely in daily life and not even provide the most basic supervision? I fixed my cold gaze on the two flustered people and faced them directly. You don't care about the child at all. You just want to exploit the child's injury as an excuse to extort money. The moment the recording played, Luna's crying suddenly snagged, her face turning deathly pale, unable to feign pity and grievance anymore. Jake's arrogance immediately dwindled, his eyes shifting. Afraid to meet my gaze again, the onlookers could immediately see the truth, and the discussion reversed completely. People pointed fingers at the two for irresponsibility and negligent guardianship, for exploiting the incident to extort money instead of reflecting on themselves. As parents, they had no bottom line. Several medical staff also testified that the child's condition was a mild and routine symptom of drowning, not as severely exaggerated by the two, and that the so-called high damages were purely unreasonable. The public opinion swung entirely to my side. Jake couldn't save face, still not willing to give up. Threatening, "We don't care about the surveillance recordings. If the child suffers because of this and you don't pay today, we will come every day to cause trouble in your community and at your child's school until the end." I had anticipated their shamelessness, so I had already preserved all live video, audio, and medical certificates, and I responded firmly, "If you come to provoke or harass with malice, I will call the police directly. All evidence will be submitted to the public security and the community. Deliberate extortion and malicious harassment are enough for you to face public security penalties." My tone was steady, with no room for retreat. Luna and Jake looked at the comprehensive evidence in my hands and then at the crowd around them, all of whom were condemning them. They knew today's extortion farce had completely failed. Continuing to entangle would only bring them humiliation. Not a single yuan would be gained, and they would lose face completely. The two flushed pale and red with anger, but they no longer dared to act up in public, and could only slink away in a dejected, ashamed state. After the hospital farce ended, Luna and Jake gained not a shred of advantage. They were full of resentment with nowhere to vent, so they turned to shaping public opinion. They understood the importance of noise in their circles and planned to smear and spread rumors to force me to bow and compromise, to regain ground for their previous defeat. That evening, in the large community group and the parents group for the residential complex, long posts from Luna appeared one after another. She deliberately cut out all the antecedents and consequences, only keeping the segments of Leo drowning and my stopping Ethan from rescuing him, painting herself as a heartbroken, helpless victim and defining me as a cold-blooded, selfish, and selfishless villain who didn't save anyone. In the text, every line conveyed grievance, accusing me of narrow-mindedness, watching a child in danger with eyes wide open, while ignoring years of close friendship, causing Leo to be hospitalized and suffer both physically and mentally. The ending also intentionally guided neighbors and parents to beware of someone as cold as me, subtly inciting everyone to isolate me and Ethan. At first, many neighbors and parents who didn't know the truth were misled. In the group, Supporting comments began to appear one after another. Some blamed me for being unsympathetic, some lamented that I was too ruthless. And even several owners who were close to Luna offered to help her take sides and speak out, continuously amplifying negative comments. In just 1 hour, the rumors fully fermented. Neighbors encountered in the community looked at me with strange eyes, and when dropping off Ethan, some parents deliberately avoided us as a mother and son, and a small circle of public opinion formed quietly in isolation. Seeing this, Luna grew more complacent and began private message bombing, seeking out familiar people one by one to cry and exaggerate, fabricating a false image of me as petty and calculating, cold to others, to smear my reputation comprehensively and ruin my footing in the circle. Faced with this deliberately manufactured online harassment, I was not panicked. Nor did I cry and plead or bargain like in the past life. I had already anticipated their methods and prepared all the evidence in advance, waiting for them to escalate it. I started to sort through the materials one by one, the complete original pool surveillance footage, the full hospital confrontation recording, the doctor's stamped diagnosis, plus Luna's private chats over the years where she mocked me, schemed against me, and leveraged resources for her own benefit, and chats between her and Jake about their lax supervision of the child and repeatedly letting Leo engage in dangerous play. After confirming that all the evidence chain was complete and error-free, I packaged everything, laid it out clearly, and published it in the community group and the parents group without a trace of emotion. My caption was simple and straightforward. The full surveillance proves the child's drowning was due to guardian negligence. I have no legal obligation to rescue the child. Luna and her husband maliciously spread rumors and extortion, which is true. All evidence is public and open for verification by everyone. The complete, unedited surveillance video clearly restored the truth. Everyone could see that during the entire gathering, Luna chatted and enjoyed herself. Jake bowed his head to his phone, and the two ignored Leo, who was playing dangerously alone in the deep-water area, showing no responsibility at all. And my interference with Ethan was merely to prevent the child from paying for others' negligence. The hospital recording also tore apart their disguise, letting everyone hear their brazen, money-grabbing, black-and-white rhetoric. The past chat records fully exposed Luna's two-faced nature, outwardly friendly, but secretly sowing rumors and calculating deceit. As the truth came to light, the group's public opinion completely reversed. The prior supportive remarks vanished, replaced by unanimous condemnation. Everyone rebuked Luna and her husband for selfish double standards, for turning black into white, for neglect and causing trouble, while they themselves spread rumors and harassed innocent people. Those who had previously backed her fell silent and withdrew, deleting their earlier statements for fear of being implicated. Many neighbors frankly said they finally saw her true colors. Her past habit of playing the victim to gain sympathy and privately stirring trouble had a rational explanation all along. Seeing public opinion spiral out of control and her smear tactics backfiring on her, Luna panicked. She hurriedly argued in the group, deleted comments, and tried to salvage the situation, but relentless truth-based comments kept suppressing her, washing her further into a darker shade, to prevent her from continuing to incite trouble. I directly saved all the smear records by taking screenshots and privately told her, "Stop all smearing actions immediately, or I will submit all evidence to the community and property management and hold her accountable for defamation and causing trouble." Luna stared at the barrage of accusations against her, and at the incontrovertible smear evidence in my hands. And her previous swagger was completely gone. After the neighborhood's public opinion fiasco, Luna knew she had completely lost her influence in the community circles and could no longer suppress me with reputation alone. So she turned her ulterior motives toward my child. She vented all her anger on Ethan, planning to isolate and harass my son in the school environment as a way to vent her grievance. On the first day Leo returned to school after being discharged, Luna specifically rushed to the school early. During the pre-class quiet period when parents were gathered, she secretly spread rumors everywhere. She brought up old issues to the parents who pick up their children and to the on-duty teachers, portraying my mother and me as cold-blooded and heartless. As if we had witnessed someone drowning and done nothing, she deliberately concealed the full facts of her guardianship negligence and her own fabrications and extortion. Moreover, she privately instigated Leo to distort the facts at school, telling his classmates and close friends in tears that Ethan watched him drown and did nothing, causing him to suffer and be hospitalized for nothing. Luna repeatedly warned Leo not to play with Ethan, and at the same time incited nearby classmates to isolate and ostracize Ethan. Young children are easily misled by their parents. Leo followed his mother's instructions and, after returning to class, immediately began spreading untrue statements, embellishing Ethan as cold and selfish. In just half a day, many students in the class were brainwashed, avoiding Ethan. No one was willing to sit with him at the same desk or form teams with him. Some even followed Leo in whispering and isolating him. Some ignorant teachers were also misled by one-sided statements, forming a preconceived bias against Ethan. In class group activities, they tacitly allowed other students to refuse to partner with Ethan. In daily class evaluations, Ethan's minor mistakes were magnified, and they treated him with a clearly different attitude. That afternoon after school, Ethan was quiet and kept his head down the entire time, no longer as lively as before. At home, he took the initiative to talk to me about what had happened at school, telling me about being isolated by peers and being treated differently by teachers. I understood clearly that this was Luna's deliberate retaliation. She exploited the child's innocence and the campus information gap to pressure the child, hoping to force me to lower my head and compromise. In the previous life, to prevent the child from being isolated, I lowered myself to reconcile with Luna, letting her manipulate and threaten me, which only led to more calculated schemes from her. In this life, I would not repeat the same mistake. The next morning, I went straight to the school and directly requested a meeting with the homeroom teacher and the grade coordinator. Facing the teacher's continued bias toward Leo and belief in one-sided words, I did not argue unnecessarily. I presented the full set of evidence on the spot. The complete pool surveillance, hospital dialogue recordings, screenshots of rumors in the community group, and chats showing Luna's deliberate instigation of the child were laid out. Clearly reconstructing all the truth, I publicly pointed out that the root of the matter was Luna and her husband's neglect of guardianship, that the drowning risk was entirely caused by their negligence, and that later they inverted the facts and spread rumors to smear us, and now even instigated campus bullying and deliberate isolation of the child. Upon seeing all the hard evidence, the school promptly clarified right and wrong and overturned the previous one-sided understanding. The homeroom teacher admitted that he had listened to rumors and made a mistaken judgment, and he publicly apologized to me and Ethan. I did not stop there. I clearly demanded the school must publicly clarify the facts and ban the spread of unfounded rumors, strictly stop the isolation and bullying within the class, seriously deal with Leo's spreading of rumors and incitement to bullying, to correct the school climate and eradicate malicious bullying. The school immediately convened a short class meeting and publicly restored the full truth of the pool incident, clearly vindicating Ethan, severely criticizing all students who followed the trend to isolate him, and requiring everyone to apologize and rectify. Leo, as the instigator, was publicly criticized by the entire school and sent home for deep reflection with a written self-criticism. The classmates who had followed the trend to ostracize Ethan finally learned the truth and voluntarily apologized to Ethan, and the previous normal relationship was restored. After learning the school's resolution, Luna rushed to the school in a rage, accusing the school of unfairness, crying that her child was wronged, and attempting to whip up sympathy again to pressure the school in to revoke the punishment. The school had already grasped the full facts and did not tolerate Luna's irrational tantrums. They directly produced chat records showing that she had instigated the child, and sternly warned her that if she continued to cause trouble at school and disrupt classes, they would inform the parents' circle and list her as a problematic parent in the school records, which would affect her child's future attendance evaluations. The firm stance completely suppressed Luna's arrogant demeanor. She did not dare to continue the confrontation and could only retreat in embarrassment. After the campus incident ended in a crushing defeat, Luna's reputation was ruined in the parents' circle, and she could no longer suppress me through life and social circles. Repeated attempts at revenge failing left the old grievance festering inside her, and she no longer fixated on petty neighborly and child disputes. Instead, she shifted her vendetta to my career. She knows that my career is my core confidence. As long as she can ruin my professional reputation and cut off my collaboration resources, she can completely control me. Luna and I belong to the local upscale service circle, with massive overlap in partners, clients, and peer networks. Relying on years of familiarity, she began to move through private domain groups in various industries and high-end social circles. Targeting and smearing my professional character, she deliberately spread a unified rationale, claiming that I am cold, callous in handling matters, devoid of humanity, that even in years when my best friends and children were in danger I stood by. And that in the workplace I am selfish and utilitarian, treacherous and untrustworthy, not worthy of collaboration or trust. Her rhetoric is smooth, adept at feigning grievance. In front of partners she intentionally plays the victim, downplaying all her own mistakes and exaggerating my one-sided label of refusing to help. In the early days, this indeed confused many insiders who did not know the truth. A few potential collaborators hesitated, small fixed-term projects were postponed from signing, and some long-time clients privately questioned my character. Moreover, to completely defeat me, Luna began to leverage her own professional network, privately contacting my longtime partners and viciously smearing my professional abilities, fabricating false rumors of my delays in fulfilling contracts, perfunctory service, and a penchant for opportunistic price hikes, attempting to sever my business channels on all fronts. Meanwhile, I did not passively wait for the crisis to brew. I knew Luna's professional weaknesses and hidden loopholes. If she could smear me maliciously, I could precisely strike at the roots of her career. I calmly collected every instance of her gossip in chats and voice records, while also tracing the violations she had accumulated over years in her field. Luna's media company has explicit industry prohibitions, forbidding employees from privately taking orders, misappropriating company client resources, or fraudulently inflating project costs for profit. She repeatedly crossed these red lines over the years. I hold complete records of her past private poaching of company clients, private contracting, and inflated reimbursements, along with corresponding evidence. These are fatal hidden dangers to her career. After 3 days of her continued smearing, negative public opinion about me in the circle peaked. I did not offer any verbal defense. I prepared a full set of evidence and submitted it in real name to the company's senior management and risk control department, while also copying the industry's self-discipline association. All evidence was clear and complete, with no missing elements in the timeline, transaction records, or chat corroboration, leaving no room for dispute. The other party's risk control department received the materials and immediately began an internal investigation. In just 1 day, they confirmed multiple of Luna's violations: private orders, misappropriation of client resources, and other records fully matched, severely violating company rules and industry codes of conduct. The company immediately issued a disciplinary decision, freezing all of Luna's work permissions, suspending all project connections, initiating a resignation accountability process, and deducting her entire quarterly performance bonus. Once accountability is enforced, she will not only be fired but also blacklisted in the industry, completely destroying her career in the local media circle. With her career suddenly severely damaged, Luna panicked completely and had no time to smear me anymore. She immediately came to me to beg for mercy, privately messaging and calling frequently, abandoning her previous arrogant stance, lowering her voice to apologize and admit fault, and begging me to withdraw the report and retract the evidence, promising never to trouble me or Ethan again. I ignored her pleas entirely, not replying or compromising. In the previous life, she relied on my network to establish herself, profiting shamelessly from my goodwill. But after trouble struck, she retaliated with smears and treachery. In this life, the seed she sowed must bear bitter fruit on her own. Seeing that begging for mercy is useless, Luna once again resorted to old tricks, slipping into the circle of partners to play the victim, claiming that I am narrow-minded and retaliating with malice. Because of private grudges, I deliberately ruined her career. But this time, no one believes her one-sided words. Her company upholds integrity and publicly announced the punishment reasons, confirming that her violations were real and not my personal revenge. The circles of connections and partners fully see the truth, and everyone understands that Luna spoke maliciously first and violated workplace rules later, a result of her own actions. Clients who had been misled by her and had their collaborations delayed have proactively contacted me to apologize, resume the original cooperation, and even actively introduce new resource channels. Career collapse and facing industry blacklisting pushed Luna to the edge of sanity. She knew there was no chance to recover outside, so she unleashed all her resentment offline, bringing her husband Jake to my door, intending to bully me into compromise by throwing a tantrum. On a Saturday morning, the two came uninvited, banging on my door with great force, making a ruckus. As I opened the door, Jake charged in first, his tone domineering, accusing me of using cruel methods, extreme measures, and destroying Luna's years-long career. Luna followed closely, readied and yelling, saying I had no regard for old feelings and was deliberately seeking revenge. Forcing their family into a corner, they deliberately kept the door wide open, letting the hallway breeze and noise spread, hoping to create a scene, attract nearby neighbors, and replay the previous act of playing the victim, using public opinion to pressure me to back down publicly and withdraw the pursuit of accountability. Within minutes, neighbors who heard the commotion filled the hallway. People stopped to watch, waiting to see how this neighborhood dispute would end. Seeing the crowd assembled, Luna immediately switched to a vulnerable posture, crying and wailing, painting herself as an innocent victim, blaming all the causes of professional downfall and damaged reputation on me. Jake cooperated, echoing her, turning black into white, claiming that after many years of friendship, I had pressured them over a mere trivial matter, ruining their future and livelihood. Full of grievance and anger, deliberately inciting the onlookers' sympathy, facing their skilled performance of playing the victim, I remained calm and refused to give them any chance to feign pity, since they insisted on acting in front of everyone. I seized the opportunity to tear open the fake mask of their entire family, letting everyone see the true face of this family. I stood at the doorway, facing the onlookers, my voice clear and steady, every word factual and evidenced. I was the first to debunk their false image of external affection, harmony, and stable family life. I publicly stated that Luna and Jake, after marriage, lived off others for a long time, dreaming big but achieving little, spending lavishly while never saving. Their home and car were funded entirely by support from both sets of parents, and they were not only unfilial but often begged their parents for money, quarreling and complaining whenever things didn't go their way. Not only that, I exposed their habit of always scheming against me since we first met. They routinely exploited my connections, resources, and benefits, freely borrowing my luxury items and unused goods, asking me to help connect jobs, education, and various life resources, always taken for granted and never giving back. If I refused to help, they would smear me behind my back, instigating trouble. I then released long-held chat screenshots and voice recordings. In the recordings, Luna repeatedly complained to friends that I was too stupid to control and that simply playing the victim could net her advantages from me. Jake even mockingly said that with me, the wronged best friend, he saved a lot of money and gained many resources. I also exposed their true attitude toward their child, publicly portraying themselves as indulgent and loving parents. They privately complained that Leo was a burden and a nuisance, believed the child hindered their pleasure, and often let the child play alone with little supervision, which was the root cause of Leo's repeated endangerments and eventual drowning. After hearing and seeing all the solid evidence, the surrounding neighbors were shocked. Previously, everyone thought it was a private vendetta among close friends, a minor dispute. Now they clearly saw that this family had long manipulated others, was selfish to the core, and attempted intimidation and revenge when trouble arose. The crowd's discussion instantly reversed, offering no sympathy for them, only accusation and disdain. Some criticized their parental neglect and harsh social conduct. Others mocked their lifelong reliance on others and opportunism, now ending in a justly deserved downfall. Luna and Jake looked pale, their bodies stiff, unable to maintain any pretense of grievance. They hadn't expected that I kept so many hidden pieces of evidence, exposing the family's ugliest, most shameful side to the public. Unwilling to concede, the insistent Jake tried to argue in defense, attempting to save face. I coldly shut down all his arguments. You were the ones who intruded, caused trouble, with malice from the start. Your own negligence and schemes toward others led to all the consequences, from drowning in the pool and spreading rumors to workplace violations and harassment. Every step you took was you provoking the trouble. I never provoked anything first. Today all the neighbors can testify that you broke in and caused trouble deliberately. If you continue to hassle me, I will call the police and pursue charges for your sedition. With a hard attitude, solid evidence, and a chorus of unanimous denunciations from those around, their last shred of arrogance was completely shattered. After publicly embarrassing themselves at the doorstep, Luna and Jake completely became the neighborhood joke, with accountability in the workplace enforced. Luna was formally fired by the media company, blacklisted in the industry, and cut off from all income sources. The family was left with only Jake's salary to cover expenses. plus medical costs for Leo's ongoing checkups and treatment. A family that was already tight on money suddenly fell into an economic crisis. They had always been extravagant, with no savings or safety net. Accustomed to sustaining their glamorous life through speculation and cutting corners. After losing stable income, they did not choose to trim expenses and work steadily to support themselves. Instead, they were fixated on quickly making money through high-risk opportunities, hoping to turn things around and return to their former glamorous life. Previously, through my connections, they had encountered a few small investment schemes and tasted the ease of profits. Now, with no way out, they completely lost their mindset and blindly trusted high-risk, high-return lending speculation projects. Determined to rely on short-term profits to fill the family's financial gaps and regain their former splendor, to gather enough capital for speculative bets, they began tearing at the household finances. They emptied the last of their savings, then brazenly borrowed money from both sets of parents. Once the elders saw through their gambler mentality, they faced stern refusals. With internal funds cut off, they shifted their gaze to neighbors and old acquaintances. Luna set aside all pride, privately messaging neighbors, former close friends, and school parents, fabricating urgent money needs, a sick child, and business cash flow problems to borrow money from everyone. Relying on the last bit of personal leverage and melodramatic pleas, she gradually obtained a substantial amount of funds. Throughout, I stood by coldly, with no intervention and no exhortation. In the previous life, I softened, seeing their family's financial strain, lending money interest-free to help, only to be repaid with ingratitude and later taken advantage of. Even after I helped, and I was smeared, in this life, their greed and ignorance deserved to pay for themselves. After the principal was raised, Jake took full control of the so-called high-return investment, ignoring kind warnings about the risk and plunging all borrowed money into it. The two daydreamed about a one-night turnaround and sudden wealth to escape their current predicament. In just half a month, the speculative project collapsed completely, the platform ran away, and all invested principal was lost with no chance of recovery. Overnight, they not only failed to profit, but accumulated a load of external debt and fell into despair. The bad news hit, and Luna and Jake completely collapsed, and the home erupted in endless quarrels. They accused each other, shifting responsibility. Luna blamed Jake for blind greed and misjudging people. Jake blamed Luna for reckless borrowing and greed. The formerly feigned harmony was torn apart, and the house was filled with insults and resentment all day long. When the debts came due, creditors from all directions arrived to demand payment. With phone bombardment and door-to-door collections continuing, the once friendly neighbors they had leaned on and helped also turned against them, demanding repayment and severing ties. Unable to repay, the two began to harbor sinister thoughts. Wanting to shift the blame onto me again, they spread outrageous rumors externally, claiming that I pressured them step by step and ruined Luna's career, causing their family bankruptcy and forced borrowing, attempting to transfer all debt and their own faults onto me. There were even 2 occasions where they brought debtors to block my building, twisting the truth and crying to debtors, urging them to pressure me and hoping I would soften and cover their debts. Facing their clumsy schemes, I directly produced all the evidence, in front of the creditors, clearly laying out the full timeline. They become unemployed, incur debt, and their speculative bets blow up. Throughout, it was entirely due to their own greed and dereliction of duty, with no relation to me. I also provided chat records showing their malicious speculation and extravagant spending of loan funds, as well as receipts, so that all creditors could see clearly that this couple brought it upon themselves. Once the creditors learned the truth, they instantly realized they had been deceived and used, and they turned around to vent their anger entirely on Luna and Jake, intensifying their debt collection and refusing to believe a single word of their lies again. Everyone stated that they would pursue legal action to collect debts, and would not show any leniency. After the economy completely collapsed and debt pressed in, Luna and Jake's life sank into the mud. The two, engulfed by constant debt collection, quarrels, and anxiety, no longer had the energy to pretend to be gentle and patient, let alone properly educate or accompany their child. They shifted all their misfortune and life's grievances onto Leo. From the drowning incident in the pool, they never reflected on their own failure of guardianship. Instead, they indoctrinated Leo with twisted ideas. They repeatedly told Leo that Ethan and I are cold-blooded and heartless, and that our failure to act left him to suffer the pain of drowning and bear bodily risks. and indirectly wrecked the entire family's life. The child who should have been properly guided to learn to fear danger and understand his parents' hard work, after long-term negative brainwashing, developed an extreme, selfish, and irritable character. He no longer believes his parents' negligence is wrong. He is sure that we as mother and son owe him everything, harboring deep resentment and hostility. Leo used to be merely naughty. Now he is increasingly rebellious and defiant, acting with extreme impulse and with no rules. At school, he still cannot stop stirring up trouble, and being reported and summoned by the school has become routine, repeatedly making mistakes without remorse. He grows more arrogant, constantly arguing and pushing with classmates, turning into the problem student of the class. Moreover, nurtured by long-term negative emotions, he begins to exhibit malicious acts of revenge. Resentful toward Ethan, he repeatedly deliberately damages Ethan's stationery and textbooks in the school corners, secretly hides Ethan's homework and study materials, and schemes to cause trouble for Ethan. The teachers heavily admonished Luna and Jake about their child's bad behavior, demanding strict discipline and positive guidance from the parents. But the debt-ridden and emotionally trapped couple had no energy to discipline their child. They either half-heartedly dealt with the school's requests, turning back to indoctrinate the child with hatred, or were angered by trivial matters and lashed out at Leo to vent their emotions. After beating him, they would immediately soften and compensate, spoiling the child's bad temper with snacks and toys. This extreme contradictory education warped Leo's personality completely. He became more and more insolent and unreasonable, with no sense of right or wrong, convinced that the whole world owes him, and that he is never at fault. The collapse of family education led Leo to mischief more frequently. While playing outside, he deliberately knocked over neighborhood children and snatched playmates' toys, bullying peers at will. When parents were held to account, Luna habitually defended him, flipped the script, and protected the child, repeatedly indulging his bad behavior. In this vicious cycle, Leo completely lost control. During a post-class activity, he deliberately tripped a classmate, causing the other to fall and skin a knee, triggering collective parental accountability. The school finally issued an ultimatum. If the parents continue to neglect discipline and the child persists in misbehavior, the student will be suspended for reflection. Under the heavy pressure, Luna and Jake not only failed to awaken or reflect, but had the fiercest argument yet. Luna blamed Jake for being useless, his investments failing and debt piling up, for not having money or power to protect his wife and child, and for letting the child suffer and get into trouble. Jake retorted that Luna was stupid and selfish, always instigating the child to hold grudges, which had twisted the once good child into a deviant and incessant wrongdoing. They tore apart the last glimmer of warmth they had, accusing each other and resenting one another, blaming all misfortune in life on the other, and the house was chaotic with constant quarrels and anger. Leo, who was in the middle of it, felt no warmth from the family at all, his personality becoming more withdrawn, extreme, and violent. He began to resent his parents' incompetence, resent the family's poverty, and no longer depended on his parents as before, facing the once glorified harmonious parent-child relationship and happy family life in the past. It had completely become a joke. The hatred and paranoia that Luna personally taught her child ultimately backfired on herself. She planned to use her child to feign misery and retaliate against me, but in the end she destroyed her own child and shattered her own family. I occasionally run into them with Ethan in the neighborhood, and the contrast is striking. Ethan is sunny, cheerful, kind to others, and knows right from wrong, while Leo is full of malice, quick to anger, and filled with resentment. The two children's life trajectories have long since diverged into two extremes due to the parents' character and choices. Family breakdown, rebellious children, debt entanglements, and a ruined career. Layer upon layer of blows have completely crushed Luna and Jake. They still have not a shred of self-reflection, insisting that I single-handedly ruined their lives, clinging to paranoid hatred to survive, not realizing that they have long since become the objects whom those around them steadily distance themselves from. The first to draw a clear boundary were their parents. The elders, at first distressed by their grandchildren's poverty, repeatedly provided pension money, patiently advising them to live steadily, quit speculative thoughts, and properly discipline their children. But Luna and Jake refused to reform, arguing and exhausting each other all day, and still blaming the elders for not helping enough. snapping at them at the slightest disagreement. The disheartened elders completely cut off all financial and human support, directly stating they would no longer manage any of their trivial matters, letting them live or die as they pleased. The safety net of the original family had completely disappeared, and they had lost their last trace of a fallback. Next, the neighborhood and the community also cut off all contact with them. Previously, Luna borrowed money everywhere, spread rumors, caused trouble, and Leo frequently bullied neighborhood children, with parents coming to hold him accountable time and again. The whole family had exhausted all neighborly affection. Neighbors who once greeted, chatted, and helped each other now walked away as soon as they saw them. In the community's public areas, no one was willing to speak to them, and the children were expressly forbidden by their parents to play with Leo. The whole family was completely ostracized in the community, a target everyone avoided. The parental circles network was also completely erased. All familiar parents knew the full truth and saw through their selfish, paranoid, black-and-white nature, coupled with Leo's persistent bullying behavior. No one wanted their child to interact with the fierce, radical Leo. All parents intentionally distanced and isolated them. Mother and son. The social circle once built on smooth talking and playing the victim that kept them afloat had completely collapsed. No longer did anyone want to listen to Luna's cries. No one believed her one-sided statements, and no one would stand up for her anymore. She had completely become a transparent figure and a joke within the circle. Most deadly was the double collapse of debt and human relations. Those who Luna had borrowed from, friends and neighbors, all gathered to sue for debt repayment. Court summons arrived at the home one after another, freezing their remaining bank cards and assets, with later enforcement and penalties on the dishonesty list looming. Former friends and partners, upon learning of their debts, dishonesty, and ruined character, blocked and deleted their contact information, cutting off all interaction. No one wanted to stay with them for a moment. Everyone feared being dragged down by the family's acts of looting and obstinacy. With no way out, Luna made one last attempt to beg me for mercy, to bind me with favors. She blocked my apartment entrance, shed her arrogance, bowed her head in apology, cried about how her family had nothing left, and pleaded for me to soften my heart, help them speak for themselves, reduce some of the public opinion impact, and even wanted me to help them repay part of the debt. I remained cold throughout, with no trace of warmth. I clearly told her that all their desperation was self-made, from parental negligence and smearing, to workplace violations, speculative debt, and instigating their child to do wrong. Every step was their own choice and had nothing to do with me. I rejected all her unreasonable demands, completely snuffing out the last strand of their hope. Seeing my indifferent attitude, Luna finally collapsed. She cried, screamed, belittled herself, but could no longer stir any emotion. Passers-by in the neighborhood showed no compassion, only cold stares, and some even said she brought it on herself. Jake could no longer bear the burden of life and debt, and his selfish nature was fully exposed. He begins to shirk all responsibility, blaming Luna as the source of all misfortune, accusing himself of marrying the wrong person and ruining his life. The two escalate from quarrel to physical altercations. The home full of constant chaos and unrest, completely devoid of any sense of home. In just a few months, this once glamorous couple, who could navigate and thrive in their circles, ends up utterly abandoned by all and surrounded on every side by enemies. After the moment of being betrayed and abandoned, Luna and Jake had no chance to turn things around. The court-ordered enforcement took effect. All their remaining fragmented assets were seized to offset the debts, and they became completely trust-efficient debtors, with travel, consumption, and credit all restricted, their basic living conditions strictly limited. To evade debt collection and court accountability, they had to move out of their original community residence, give up all the glamorous social circles, and hurriedly move into a small, old, remote urban village rental house. The environment was damp and messy, crowded and claustrophobic, with no supporting facilities and no neighborly interactions. A world apart from their previously refined and privileged middle-class life. Luna, who once loved fashion, comparison, social media hype, and networking, had completely shed all her gloss. No refined makeup, no designer clothes, and every day she hustled for food, fuel, debt, and anxiety, prolonged depression, poverty, and internal conflicts rapidly withered her, her face pale and her condition listless, no longer showing even a trace of her former gentle and decent appearance. Jake had also lost all his edge. The swagger and pride of the past were gone. His once stable job was terminated due to his bad credit record, and no company would hire someone with a bad credit history. So he could only rely on scattered odd jobs to earn meager income and barely get by. Day after day of hard labor and the heavy life pressures made him decadent and irritable, utterly pessimistic. The two of them no longer had any point to argue, only dead silence, lingering resentment, and endless hatred remained. They no longer quarreled with each other, but there was no longer any communication either. Living in a small rental room, they were as good as strangers. This marriage, sustained by false pretenses of propriety, was now dead in name and reality. What is most lamentable is Leo's change. Long-term poverty, a broken family environment, the parents' negative violence, plus the previously instilled hatred, had completely ruined his childhood. In the new environment, he became extremely insecure and overly sensitive, his personality more and more perverse and withdrawn, truancy and mischief becoming the norm. Without good family education, without proper values to guide him, and with a bad reputation from the past, the teachers and classmates at the new school deliberately kept their distance and guarded him. He fully became a problem child, with no one to discipline or guide him, moving step by step toward ruin. This is the inevitable evil consequence of Luna and Jake's indulgence and neglect, as well as their paranoia brainwashing, and no one can reverse it. Occasionally seeing them by chance on the street, I can clearly glimpse the three of them in their pitiable state, a family that used to plot against me, squeeze me, and rely on stealing my connections and resources to raise themselves up, ultimately suffocated themselves in their own selfishness and greed. They no longer have the courage or the means to entangle with me in any way. Even the courage to look up and meet my eyes has completely disappeared. In contrast, Ethan and my life has become more stable and prosperous, free from this family's endless bondage, scheming, and consumption. Our life has returned to quiet and warmth. I focus on running my own business. My reputation is solidifying, my network is of higher quality, and my income is steady and abundant. Ethan remains kind, simple, and sunny, unaffected by past storms. His values are upright, his treatment of others gentle. He excels academically, has good conduct, and is loved by teachers and classmates. Far from Leo's negative energy and Luna's deliberate provocations, his growth path is clean, straightforward, and increasingly positive. I have completely cut off all ineffective socializing and fake friendships, no longer soft-hearted toward unworthy people or self-destructive toward meaningless social obligations. I have kept my bottom line, protected my child's stability, and rewritten the tragic ending of my previous life. I never actively harmed anyone, from start to finish. I simply did not let my child pay for others' negligence and greed. I simply reclaimed the stability that belonged to me, refusing endless moral coercion and malicious exploitation. All the retribution and dire consequences were created by Luna's family themselves, and have nothing to do with me. The causal laws of the world are clear. Good deeds yield good fruit. Evil deeds yield evil fruit. They attempted to morally bully and manipulate others, to plot and seize others' benefits, but in the end they harmed themselves, leading to family downfall, abandonment by others, ineffective parenting, and lifelong misfortune. The turmoil has fully subsided, and the dust has settled. The past grudges and entanglements have dispersed with the wind. I am no longer bound by the cold memories of former experiences, and I have completely let go of my past obsessions and resentments. Ethan and I guard a stable life, moving forward steadily, living in peace year after year, and fully embracing the fulfilling life that belongs to us.